Good morning and welcome to my review of the Canon SL2 or 200D as a vlogging camera out here on the magnificent beach at the Strand in Townsville. And what better place to have a little chat about the pros and cons of this camera for vlogging. So I've been using the 200D for about 3 months now. I've shot quite a lot of YouTube videos with it and I've got a good idea of the pros and cons when it comes to vlogging. It's a DSLR that shoots 1080p 60 frames a second video. It's got Canon's latest APS-C sensor, which is 24 megapixels, that has much improved dynamic range and gives you really quite good image quality. And it's got the dual pixel autofocus, which was the big game changer for this. A little bit more about that later. I've got it here with the new kit lens, which is an 18 to 55 f4 to 5.6 and 20% lighter and smaller, which always helps if you're vlogging. And I've also got it with the little Joby sort of wrist strap, which is quite good because I found that the stock Canon strap is a little bit bulky and gets in the way, so that's quite handy. Yeah, so I paid around about 900 Australian dollars with the kit lens. That's about 650 US, but no doubt there'll be some decent discounts around Christmas and into the new year as well. So price wise, I think it's a bit of a bargain. So what are the main pluses of the 200D as a vlogging camera? So the first one, fully articulating touchscreen. This is so useful. You can put it all the way around, so when you're doing that sort of thing, you can see yourself, get loads of different angles, and it's just really great to be able to touch the screen and get your focus. And that's coupled with Canon's secret sauce, which is their dual pixel autofocus, which does amazing tracking in video. It's pretty much the best in the business. And when you combine that with a fully articulated touchscreen, it's absolutely a phenomenal feature for video, which I use all the time and is one of the main benefits of this camera. So it's never let me down yet. So that's really nice. The other great feature about this camera is that it has got a mic input right there, and this allows you to put in a shotgun microphone such as the one that I use, which is the Rode Video Micro. Thanks, Adam.
No worries.
So here's the Rode Video Micro. This is the shotgun mic that I use most of the time on this camera, and you just screw it on there, peel this off, pop it into the input, and you've got yourself a shotgun mic that gives you directional sound, much higher quality sound than the camera's inbuilt microphones. And the Rode Video Micro comes with this dead cat as well, which keeps the wind off too. So that is a really nice thing to have. There are loads and loads of buttons on this camera, which makes for some really intuitive controls. You've got access to pretty much everything you need at your fingertips. Canon have been making cameras for a long time. They build very simple menu systems, and at least I find it very easy to navigate my way around the camera and have access to all the settings that I need on the fly. I have been using Canon for a long time though, so if you're coming from a different system, there might be a bit of a learning curve. Another bonus is that it is small and light for a DSLR. It's not going to rival the compact cameras or the smallest mirrorless cameras in terms of size and weight, but for a DSLR, this is as good as you're going to get basically. And the build quality is great as well. This isn't a top-end camera, but it's a composite plastic which keeps it lightweight, but it feels solid. There's no obvious creaks or bends or flexing. It's not weather sealed, but really for this price range, you're not going to get that, I don't think. But I've got confidence that this camera can take a few knocks, and if I were to drop it, I think it would probably be okay. So we should probably talk about the image quality, and it's really good. No 4K, which I will talk about briefly in a moment, but the 1080p out of this camera is fantastic. You can shoot up to 60 frames a second to give yourself some slow motion. And I really like the colours. Canon are well known for their colour science, and I'd have to agree that I'm really happy with the image quality that comes from this camera. Canon have also got probably the best range of lenses, and affordable lenses as well. So I've got on here the 18-55, but I also use the 10-18 wide-angle lens, which is also small and light. And I've got a full frame lens, a 50mm 1.8, which works out at roughly 80-85 millimeter focal length, which is great for portraits. So being able to have a choice of all those native lenses for a camera like this is something that is a huge bonus if you want to experiment with different looks to your videos and really branch out and grow into the system. So great lens choice. And finally, what's worth a mention is the battery life. I've been really pleasantly surprised with the battery life on the 200D. I'm getting about 2 hours of shooting time on a single battery. I have bought a spare just as a backup, but I can only think of 1 or 2 occasions where I've needed to use that when I'm vlogging, and those have been on days where I've really hammered it and filmed loads and loads of stuff. So really great battery life for a camera of this size and price. Unfortunately, there's no perfect vlogging camera, and there are a few drawbacks with the 200D. So let's get into that. The first one I'm going to talk about is audio. The number one issue I've run into with this camera is the mic jack. Maybe it's user error, but I keep knocking it with the articulated touchscreen, and basically it's coming out a little bit, or it seems to be anyway. I'm not fully sure on what happens, but I review my footage when I'm editing, and I've basically lost audio from the shotgun mic, and I've gone to the camera's internal audio, which is always terrible quality, especially if you've got a little bit of wind. So that's really annoying. It happens pretty much every time I've made a video with the 200D. Should I be more careful? Probably, but when you're out vlogging and getting out around the place like we do, the camera does get thrown around a little bit, and these things happen. I wish that there was a more robust input here, or some kind of locking mechanism to avoid that problem happening, because it is really annoying. I know that this is a budget camera, so we can't ask for too much, but if I've got a nitpick, that would be number one con. Staying with audio, the preamp on this camera is not as high quality as something like a Panasonic G85 or probably a Sony Alpha series camera. It's quite hissy. If you leave it on auto, which I tend to do quite a lot as I'm vlogging and moving from one situation to another quickly, I don't always have time to set the sound manually, you can notice quite a rise and dip in the background hiss as you go from quiet to loud environments, and it's just one of those things. There are ways in software to reduce that. It's just a question of whether you have the time or can be bothered to do that. Another major bug still with audio is that I can't monitor my levels while I'm recording with the 200D. It's really disconcerting in a way that you start recording and you've got no levels on the LCD screen, so you've got no idea if you're hot or too quiet. You've got to stop recording and go back into the menu system to check that again. And if you're in a studio, no big deal, but vlogging, when it's all sort of happening spontaneously around you, not great. Another negative is the image stabilization. This camera, as far as I can tell, does not come with Canon's digital image stabilization. You've got to pony up a little bit more to the T7i or some of their higher end cameras for that. You're just going on the optical image stabilization in the lens. If you're used to something like a Panasonic G85, which has amazing dual IS, or a compact camera with a fixed lens, even that's significantly better, you're going to get some shakier footage out of this camera. I use the 10-18mm quite a lot, and that does help being on a wide angle, but your footage is going to be shakier. Even if you try your best and use a little mini tripod or whatever, you are going to get shakier footage. Another drawback is the way that the camera shifts exposure when you go from a dark to a light environment. It can be really, really slow. And I'll try and find an example to put up on the screen for you so you can see what I'm talking about. But I wasn't really expecting this. I've had other Canon cameras and different brands before, and it's always been relatively smooth and quick. It's not terrible. Sometimes it's better than other times as well. It's kind of unpredictable. I wouldn't say that it has spoiled any videos or really worried me that much, but seeing as we're talking about some of the cons in the interests of honesty and fairness, that is something you might experience as well, going from light to dark. Just quickly, some obvious things. No 4K. Personally, that's not important to me. It might be to you. This camera doesn't offer it, so if you're looking for 4K, you're going to be looking elsewhere anyway. No electronic viewfinder. It is a DSLR, so it uses an optical viewfinder. The benefits of an electronic viewfinder is you get a sort of what you see is what you get when you're looking through at the screen inside, and that's really good for video. You're going to need to go for a mirrorless option instead if you want that. The other thing is not weather sealed. As I said, very good build quality, but if you're going to be exposing this to wind and rain and sand on the beach, you might want to look for a camera with some weather sealing. This doesn't offer it. And finally, I guess the only other thing is that it is still kind of big and bulky for a vlogging camera. Yes, it is the smallest or one of the smallest and lightest DSLRs, but it is still a DSLR. You might be better suited to a compact, a lot more easier to use. So before you take the plunge, just think long and hard. Is this something that you really want to be lugging around? Because you've got to think about it, you know. It's not like a compact or your phone that you can just sort of grab, quickly use, put down, forget about it. You're always going to have this sort of hanging off you or in your hand. So yeah, something to think about. So wrapping up then, should you get the Canon 200D for vlogging? Listen, I think this is a really great all-round camera for the price. It's versatile, great image quality, easy to use. It'll just get the job done. There are lots of options these days for other cameras. You might consider the Panasonic G85 instead of this one. I had that camera, and it does have a lot more video features. So if you want to get more into creative filmmaking, then that is a great option. It only has a contrast detection autofocus system though, so if you're going to be using autofocus, you're going to prefer the dual pixel from this guy. And this has got a larger sensor, so it actually takes really nice photos as well. So if you're not only interested in video but also still photography like me, then getting something like this is really good. But the same could be said of the Sony cameras in the Alpha 6000 series, the 6500 they're up to now. Amazing image quality, 4K. I've heard that the battery life isn't great. I've never owned one, so I can't really comment. They don't look as ergonomic to me, but that's a personal preference. Or you might prefer a compact camera as well. Don't discount those options. If you're not desperate to have the ability to attach an external microphone, then something like a Canon G7X Mark II, or the Sony RX100 Mark IV or 5, or the Panasonic LX10. Those are fantastic options for YouTube as well. But I've been really happy with this camera. Am I going to keep it? You'll have to wait and see. I am a complete camera nerd. Adam's laughing. That brings us to the end of my review of the 200D. It has been a long video, but I wanted to make it as comprehensive as possible for you guys and to give you my honest opinion of using this camera for vlogging. I hope you've enjoyed it. Give me a like if you have. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below. Let's get a discussion going, and subscribe if you haven't. I do a lot of these kinds of tech reviews for vlogging gear, and also family vlogs from beautiful Townsville in North Queensland. Thanks to Adam for shooting some B-roll as well. Cheers, mate.
No worries.
And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.